Welcome back to Tools and Trails. Today, got something a little bit different, and I think you've maybe caught a little glimpse of this truck in the background of some of our other shots. We were putting the lift kit on Sasha here a few months back. You probably saw this in the background and kind of maybe looking back wondering what that was. And so and maybe even mentioned this in the introduction video, but wanted to kind of swing back to it. This is kind of my long-term project. This is a 1960 Ford F100 Short Bed, two-wheel drive, and been working on it now for about 2.5 years, and just wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed, let you know what we're doing with it and what to expect, and we'll do some updates along the way. Probably not going to do any steady filming of actual progress on it, but we'll bring you up to speed and keep you up to date on what's happening. So welcome to the channel, and let's get right into it. All right, well, I mentioned this is the 1960, and so the 1960s were the end of what they call the third generation Ford F-Series trucks. They ran from 1957 to 1960, so 4 years, pretty much the same. They're not the most popular of the trucks. You know, the 56s, 55s, and 56s, they had the really curved body style, the fenders and everything. They're great hot rods. Bring a ton of money on the market when they're fixed up. Really nice looking trucks. And then in the 60s, 61 and on up, those are starting to get really popular now. You get a unibody, short bed unibody from 61. That's a super rare truck and very well sought after. But the 57 through 60s, the third generation, not as desirable, but they've always been a favorite body style of mine. I've always really liked them. A lot of people refer to them as the refrigerator because they kind of got big and bulky, kind of big curved hoods. But even though they weren't really stylish, and Ford had some problems with styling in the late 50s. I mean, some of their cars not good looking, but a lot of innovation, and the trucks were the same way. So this was where you started developing the bigger cab, a lot wider. They had better suspension, they had better engines. All of that stuff started coming around, better brakes, at least for the time. So there was a lot of innovation going on. 1959 was the first year you could actually buy a 4-wheel drive from the factory. Before that, you had to send it out to an aftermarket company. So that came during this generation. So some things like that make this kind of a cool time and a lot of development. So always been kind of a favorite of mine. So that said, we are not keeping much of anything on the running gear of this truck. Basically, the cab here is about it for the regular truck. When I got this truck, the cab was sort of sitting funny, and I thought the frame was bent, but turns out, no, just the cab mounts were all rotted out. And so I'll show you, we had to replace quite a bit of that stuff to get things straightened out. But we started with the frame, and when I got the old frame exposed, it was more work than I wanted, and you'll see why in a second. So I just started over, built a new frame, and you'll start seeing more of that here. So we started up front. My intention with this truck is to run a small block Ford 302. I went out and bought a 1992 Ford Thunderbird with a 5-liter engine, fuel injected 302. Same engine they ran in the Mustang at that time. And I got the rear end out of that, so we'll look at that in a minute. The front end, I've got from a 2004 Crown Victoria. Very, very popular swap in the front, especially on these old trucks. So I've got, the A-arms, rack and pinion steering up front. You can buy the kits, you can see them right here, the brackets that are welded onto the frame to accept the Crown Vic front end. So these fit in here really nice, even on a stock frame. So I wanted to go with that because this truck is going to be just a hot rod for me, play truck. Take on cruises and short trips and things like that. I want it to be a good driver. So this will make it handle really good. This frame, I use 2x6 by 3/16 inch steel tubing. This frame is really stiff, so this thing should handle really good when we're all done.
So back in the back.
So in the back of the truck, you can really start to see some of the frame, heavy-duty frame that I made. And I'll post a lot of pictures of this progress. So this took quite a while actually, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I've got that mated with the whole rear suspension clip and rear end from the Thunderbird. Also pretty popular swap on some of these old trucks. It gives you the independent rear suspension, 8.8 rear end. I've got 373 gears in here already with a locker, so no one wheel peel on this thing. We're gonna line them both up. So yeah, suspension, this thing is all set up to go. I did one downside when you go with the Thunderbird rear end is the bolt pattern on Thunderbird is 5 on 4 1/4, but the Crown Vic is 5 on 4 1/2. So I was able, and it's also drum brakes. So I was able to find a set of Cobra spindles for this that are the same bolt pattern with disc brakes. So I was able to get those, will slide right onto the axles. So should be good to go there now. These are not the wheels and tires I'm going to run on this. I have a different set. So these are Cobra wheels, but they're not what's going to stay on it. Moved the gas tank to the back, so it's got a 15-gallon fuel tank back here instead of in the back of the cab. So this is where you would normally fill up with gas. So got rid of that so we're not smelling the fuel all the time. Putting that into the back. So. Well, the cab on this thing was a lot more work than I thought it was ever going to be. If you ever dig into one of these old trucks, be ready for a lot of work, because this one, I would say, probably for the most part pretty good shape as far as rust goes, but even so, the more you go, the more you find. And so, like I said earlier, this one, its main problem was right in here. There's a cab support on both sides that rests on the frame and the frame support bracket, which I took off of the old frame. That was rusted out, so this whole cab was kind of sitting on here, kind of funny. So ended up having to put new supports. This is a whole new floor piece here on both sides, both driver and passenger, because we were rusted out pretty bad in the front here. Now this sloped plate, the kick panel, little bit of rust on the bottom, but I was able to salvage that and get that all sealed up and put back together, so pretty happy with that. The back corners, you can see the cab corners on both sides, those were rusted out pretty bad. These have a hole down here in the back of the cab, and if water gets in there, and water does get in there, it'll sit down there. It has no place to go, and it'll just sit down there. So you can pretty much bet if you want one of these old trucks, probably going to have to replace those cab corners. About $150 a side. Get them from LMC Truck. They got they're great replacements. They fit in really, really nice. So pretty happy with that. Then just a little bit of patching around the doors, you know, kind of in these front corners on both sides where, you know, the front wheels had kicked up stuff and had got trapped in the body. Had to fix a few of those things, but pretty small for the most part there. So just, you know, took a long time to do. So, but got it all put together, and we mounted it on the frame here just a few weeks ago. Right now we're in the process of getting the inside finished, and so this primer color you see on here, we're planning on painting the inside. The outside of the truck has got a really nice patina. We're going to keep that. Just when we get to the finished stages, we'll kind of buff that out, bring out some of that aging, some of that cool color, then either clear coat it or oil it. But the inside, I want that looking pretty nice. So that's where we're at right now. Got a new set of doors for it. Story behind this truck is previous owner got a little too much liquid courage one night, ran her into the ditch, and when the tow truck showed up, ran a strap through the windows and lifted it out by the cab, which the guy should have been shot. Ruined the doors, pinched the cab, both sides right here, so pulled this in. So we had to get a couple of new doors. We were able to get this pushed out and back lined up again, so pretty happy with how this turned out. I'll probably see if we can't maybe put a little patina on that corner right there. It's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. That's kind of what we want. These down here, so this is the new piece that was welded in. This is a whole new piece there, so we'll try to kind of bring back a little patina on those corners. Most of that obviously will be covered by the bed. So, but that's kind of where we're at with the truck at this point. Ultimately, you know, a lot of things kind of up in the air. We're going to run probably just a stock bench seat in it for now. I'll get a steering column from I Did It, decoded digital instruments in it. So interior is going to be nice, comfortable. Maybe do vintage air. We'll see. Fuel injected 5 liter. As far as the engine goes, we'll do aluminum heads, cam. Thinking a E303 Ford racing cam. Obviously headers, things like that. So should run pretty good, and yet still be pretty streetable, drivable. So that's kind of what we're going for. Like I mentioned, kind of our next step was finishing the interior, getting that painted. I was able to find the Duplicolor spray cans from local auto parts store in Wimbledon white. So you Ford guys know that was a pretty popular color back in the day, and so I was pretty happy about that. So that's what we're going to go with on the inside. Once we get the interior of the cab sprayed, we'll start working on these doors here. So I'm going to leave the outside. This one here, I'm hoping that gray stuff will kind of buff out. I think it will. The white is underneath there. And then this is the inside. Had to do a little bit of rust panel repair on these doors, but that was much simpler rather than fixing the old doors, which were squeezed and kind of destroyed up in these upper corners. So that's kind of what we're working on next. They're tight now, they're sealed up, they're repaired as far as rust goes. We just need to do a nice finish coat on them. So, well, that's one of the things I wanted to mention. You know, we've kind of adopted a name for this truck, and we call it Miller. And where that came from is, you know, this is our Miller time, if you will. So, got my buddy Jim, he's running the camera for us today. Big help on this truck for me. It's always fun to hang out with a buddy and work on projects like that. That's what makes these fun. So, you know, some of y'all have mistresses, some of you go hang out at the bar, do your thing. This is our Miller time, if you will. It's we hang out at the garage and work on old trucks. So we got the list here. So the Miller cab, we got a few things crossed off. And I think we got a few things more we can get crossed off the list here too pretty quick. So yeah, working on the inside. Next step will be the motor, and we'll go from there. So make sure you're staying tuned. Hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll try to get you some updates on this stuff a little more often. And yeah, enjoy the pictures that are attached in the video there. Kind of shows the progress up to this point, and we'll see you next time on Tools and Trails.